Hey, it's Zim, and today we're taking an early look at Vault of the Void. Now, this is a card game deck builder roguelike, similar to Slay the Spire, or many others in this genre, although this does some things unique, which makes it kind of stand out. It does some things that I really like, it does some things that I don't like, but we're going to go ahead and jump right in and show off the game, and whether or not it's worth picking up in early access right now. Now, this game is $14.99 on Steam. So it's actually one of the cheaper ones you can buy. We're going to start a new game here. And first thing I like is it offers a difficulty. Now this allows you to choose what you want to play. Notice that this one is locked, and actually when you first start up the game, you'll have to play the introduction, and then it will unlock normal, hard, and impossible. Now I will say that normal is fairly easy, and hard is probably where most people who are familiar with the genre will want to start playing out. But we're just going to go ahead and jump into normal game and kind of show off the things that it's doing. As you'll notice, you'll have 3 characters to choose from. When you first start, once again, you'll have essentially the rogue, then we have a monk, and we have a mage. All of these kind of do things that you've seen before in other deck builders, but also do other things that are unique. I will say that the Enlightened has some problems with their design in how the game works, but I'll go over that a little bit later. For now, we'll just start out with the Rogue, in which case you get to choose your starting decks of Bleed or Blade. This is kind of going to change how you play, but also your starting spells. Starting spells are kind of like hero powers in terms of that you get to play them onto an enemy. They'll do different things based on the character and obviously based on the spell. But we're going to jump into Bleed. You also get a random booster, which is going to give us some new cards that we can customize our deck with. Now, this game is all about customizing your deck throughout the run. And I will say, while it's helpful, it definitely can seem like something you forget about as well. So this is our starting deck here. And in Vault of the Void, it's going to show us what villains we will be facing. Now, these are random based on a selection. I think I've seen about 6 or 8 of them, all in all. Each one has interesting effects, but are also problematic for the different builds. So it's definitely something that you'll start to choose the bosses based on your build more than you will based on what might seem interesting or new. So it gives you, the more knowledge you have for this game, the more you'll be able to choose which bosses you want based on the randomization. Now, I do believe that this can also alter your build by knowing ahead of time what bosses you're going to face, which kind of makes it a little bit easier. But for the most part, especially when you're starting out new, that won't be the case. You'll also be presented with some options here. And let's get an elite artifact. Why not? Artifacts are presented up the top here, and we'll give you general bonus effects, very similar to Slay the Spire. You'll also notice a gem slot system, very familiar to Roguebook. This will allow you to customize the cards and give them additional effects and things like that. So let's give Rage to one of my cards here. And it's as easy as that, but once they're socketed, they are socketed. You can also remove cards from your deck and add more, but note that you do have to stick to a certain card breakdown, in this case 20 cards in your deck. However, if I wanted more attacks and less defense, or more defense and less attacks, I can definitely do that. You can also save the decks and try out different variants. Of course, these are going to change between runs, so these saves are only for those runs. And this is kind of our map. It allows us to progress in a way that we want, and obviously at the end is the boss we have to fight. In the upper right hand corner here, we can see his portrait, this fat pig, and we can begin. Now, we can also hover over things to tell us what we're going to face. So these are mob rooms, and if I clear this, I will get an upgrade. If I clear this one, I will receive a potion. That's what those icons are by the side. And obviously, if you hover over it, it'll give you some tool tips about what's going to happen in there. Now, we see some treasure chests in a row. It seems like a good idea to go up. And now we get to see the enemies, and here we can change our deck. So, like I said, this game is very much based on customizing your deck throughout the run based on what you're facing, meaning that you can adapt and adjust, which is really cool, but it definitely does make the game a little bit easier as well. We're going to go and jump into a battle here, and I'll show you what we're looking at. Now, the other thing it does differently, and this one I don't know how I feel about yet, is the energy system. So we have energy. We gain 3 at the start of round 1, and then for the rest of this entire fight, we will gain 2 energy at the start of the round. Now you'll notice there's 5. You're capped at 5 is because you can send cards to the discard for energy, and some cards actually give you bonuses as well. You'll also notice enemies at the top, and unfortunately, if you get a lot of defense in the beginning, they're useless, right? So what we might want to do is we can From the Shadows, which will give us 10 block next round, and then that used 2 of our energy, because the cost is in the upper left-hand corner. But we can discard some of these blocks, which aren't going to be very useful, to give us more energy. Now, energy will carry over from round to round in addition to what you generate, and also you can save cards from round to round. So it's a very interesting develop your hand and board situation with this game. We're going to start throwing out some bleeds here. And as you can see, he's going to take 10 damage and he has 10 health. So after he activates, he will die. So we can go and throw this on a mage. Why not? So then the enemy gets to act. And here's one thing that I'm not a big fan of. Now, enemies, when they attack, will do something called generating threat. So the threat is the damage that they're going to deal to you. So I know that 9 damage is coming at me. I'm not a big fan of how it shows it on the health bar right away. I think having this number of threat is enough. I don't need like a visual representation, because when I look at my health bar and I see red, I automatically think I'm damaged. And that actually becomes a bigger issue with the monk, because the monk will apply different damage types coming out in the future of the round. And so like it can get pretty confusing on whether or not an enemy is going to die or not, but I'll show that off with the monk in a little bit. But as we can see, we have 9 damage coming in. So we want to reduce that as best as possible, but we're out of energy. So we might want to sacrifice a couple energy here, or a couple cards for some energy here. You'll also notice the guy had been replaced. These are called waves, essentially. We want to essentially get to 100% battle progress, meaning enemies will continue to spawn in until that's met. So obviously if I kill someone else, that'll probably meet the 100% and no one else will be summoned, and then once you kill everyone, you're done. Now obviously for bosses, for the most part, they're the only threatening thing. They won't summon in anything else. They might summon in spawns, but that won't be for battle progress. That's just a summon that they can bring into battle. Go ahead and get some energy here. Now we might want to use our ability, which is applying weak, so it'll weaken their attacks. So as you can see, his attack went down to 3. Enemy cards tell you exactly their attack. How many times they're going to attack is that times number, and also what they're planning on doing. Now these enemies can heal, they can purge, they can deal damage, they can summon enemies, a wide variety of abilities, but you won't know until it's your turn to act. So obviously no threats being generated, so I don't need blocks, so I might want to throw this for energy. And give them the bleed there. So that should kill this entire round. And we didn't take damage, which is good. Oh, they healed, so actually it's going to throw off my math. Rip. So yeah, with bleed especially, bleed happens after they act. There's an artifact or a relic that basically makes bleed trigger first before they get to act. So the difference is that they'll take damage before they get to trigger their abilities, which is important in case of like healing. So like that guy got a heal, and so I didn't kill him with my bleed. But if my bleeds would have triggered first, he would have never healed, which would have been nice. Now, Also note that even though enemies died to a bleed, they still generated threat. This is slightly confusing in terms of like you think they're dead so they won't still push damage based on a status effect, but that damage will still come through unless I end the fight. So I would take the 6 damage if I don't block, or if I don't kill him this turn. But since I killed him, obviously I'm not going to take damage. So it's just kind of a weird delayed feeling on damage. It's not necessarily bad, but it definitely takes some getting used to, especially compared to some of the other games I've played. Of just knowing that like the threat may be applied even though the enemy who's applying it is dead, means it will still count against you. But we get a juggle here and a ton of little resources. I will say this game does kind of suffer from like a currency bloat. So in addition to these stones, which you earn throughout battles, it's the void stone bar up here, you also have essence and souls, and then cards, obviously, for your deck. Essence is kind of a currency, basically used like gold, but then it can also be used to transfer into souls based on other things, and souls are used to attack the vault if you get to the vault, and it just, yeah. I think they could probably just do something more with this. Just a system, kind of something I just don't like, a nitpick, if you would. So we're going to go to the shrine. Shrines are essentially where you can heal, or you can try to gain different things. Treasure chests are gaining cards, and also other things. So in this case, we're also getting 39 essence. And also souls. This is cursed items, as you can see. A double-edged sword, essentially, giving you some positives, but also some negatives. So we add a volatile step to our hand, but we start with 3 energy or less. We get sidestep. So as you can see, Boots of Quickness is what it's offering us. We, of course, don't have to take it if we don't want. It will give us sidestep, which is pretty decent, but it will essentially have a negative. So in this case, it will probably give us some void. Yeah, we'll gain a void card if we take Boots of Quickness for the volatile sidestep. You can also destroy it for souls, which once again is used against the vault. And there's also some things you can use souls for as well. Or we can drain it, which means we'll gain more souls, but we'll gain a void card. Void cards are just dead cards in your hand, something you don't really want. I think we'll just destroy it. So different mobs. Green is obviously elites. That's kind of why it's a different color, meant to stand out. You can also buy additional spells, kind of your hero power you start with based on the deck you choose. You can add more to that. The cooldown on those is carried between rounds, though, which is kind of odd. So you can come into a round fully loaded and ready to go, or you could come into a round that you just use your hero power the following round at the very last end to just clean up a mob before it could damage you. And then you're suddenly waiting 4 turns to use it again. It's kind of a weird feeling. I wish it was just automatically refreshed between every fight, but that might just be too strong, so I understand why they did it. These gold coins looks like you are getting money, essence, but actually it's a merchant. Most of the merchant stuff I think is a little bit overpriced, based on like what he offers, and I wish he would offer more if I had to complain about anything. Because he only really offers cards, at least in my experience. I don't want to buy any of those. So here's Dark Mime. Here's where you can use souls. So you can pay with souls or pay for void cards essentially being added to your deck to duplicate a card in your deck. Obviously this early on, you probably don't have any cards that are that insanely buffed that you want to duplicate, so it's probably just not worth it, so I'll leave. Anytime you want to add or subtract cards from your deck, you can do that here. So I might want to take out an Evade and add an Opportunist. Oh, and I got juggle. Maybe I want to add a juggle. But remember, you do have to maintain that 20 card limit. Got dead tiles, which led to a random event. Secret room. I noticed a small crack in the side wall of the room. Peering inside through the darkness, you notice the crack leads to an open room. We can do... That's the secret room that we found, so might as well get it. It looks like we have some pretty good choices here, though. Ooh, and upgrades. So with that secret room, we've been given the choice to upgrade one of our cards, or in this case, two of our cards, which will, as you hover over, show you what it's going to give you. So Draw Blood will add 2 volatiles instead of 1. Opportunist will go from 7 and 12, from 4 to 7. So usually pretty good to just upgrade these. Probably upgrade the one we have Rage Stoned. Once again, we can heal here, but we haven't taken damage, so we can greed. But basically, that's the game. Not too bad. It's got a lot of interesting mechanics, but I want to show off the monk and kind of my issue with the health bars kind of being confusing in this game and could use some cleaning up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over that way, so I'll see you there. And as you can see, as I'm starting up this monk game, we are presented with a couple different variants. In fact, it looks like it's just one. The puppeteer has replaced someone else. And once again, we got to choose one of these random effects. In this case, either 5 souls or 1 random void stone. Let's take the souls. I'm not going to deck build, but I do want to show you what I'm talking about with the damage, so we're going to just jump right into one of these combats here. So, as you can see with the threat generation from enemies, it's a little bit odd with the monk. Now, his is all delayed block. He gets a little bit of block, but then he gets block later from another turn. Now, that can be really problematic because the enemies might not attack, and so you might put up block in hoping that their next abilities are attacks, but if they don't, then it just goes to waste. It's easier to miss blocks with the monk. That's just a skill thing, but it is a slight frustration with the monk. But I want to talk about these. So he has what's called Future Strikes, which inflict damage on every even turn, then resets to 0. So you build up a damage bar essentially on their health, and once it hits those turns, it will deal that damage. But since we're obviously on an odd turn right now, it's not going to. And as you can see, we get that yellow kind of hovering over their bar, which means that he's going to be taking this damage soon. But we also have another type of damage, and we didn't draw into it, which will actually start coloring the bar a different color, which resolves damage on a different way. So what's happening is you'll have these actions where you'll set up damage, and their enemy health bars will look 3 to 4 different colors based on what's happening in the game, and it's hard to figure out / read what is going to happen, because that future damage might be reduced because of guard stuff that happens by their actions. It might be that it could suddenly put them out of death, right? You might be like, oh, I've got this guy killed in 2 turns when it goes to even, and then on your turn, on their turn, they heal, and then suddenly like the health bars change colors because suddenly it's not killing him, and then like blue is suddenly pushing different damage, and like it's super weird. It's just kind of hard to read, and it's something I'd like to see cleaned up. It's probably my biggest problem with this game right now. But his power is once we get 3 of the same type of attack or defense cards played in a row, we get to play these for free. And we can also activate our ability, which steals She. So if I deal She, there's that blue bar like I was saying. Suddenly they're taking yellow and blue damage. Now She is damage that, like, it's just not explained very well, right? So She exceeding an enemy's HP will destroy it. So it's essentially damage but not damage. And so that's why these numbers get weird and these health bars get weird as you play throughout the game. So I do wish they would clean that up in some way. I don't know how they could clean that up in some way to make it make sense. But I do believe it needs to happen. And see, there's those numbers, and then suddenly all these guys are dead, and you're like, oh, perfect victory, great. So it can be pretty, like, sudden that enemies die, or you can try to, like, figure it out, and you figure it out and think, oh, I've got this down to, like, exactly where it needs to be, and then suddenly the math is thrown off because the enemy did something, and so the She's not killing them, and actually they're still at, like, half health then, and then they're suddenly pushing more damage or attacks that you thought you weren't going to be taking. It's overly complicated, and I do believe that there must be a way to, like, kind of clean that up a little bit. Especially if you're a newer player and you're starting out with the monk. I think he's probably the hardest to, like, kind of grasp because of just how weird his defense timings are and because of how weird his damage is as well. Anyways, we're gonna save an exit here. So Vault of the Void, like I said, $14.99. This game is in early access. Very similar in style to Slay the Spire, but does do some actually unique things and interesting things that have made me want to play this game more. So right now, I think if you are into the Slay the Spire style games and you're looking for more, Vault of the Void is definitely something to check out and keep your eye on. I think it's got a great soundtrack, great art style, tons of fun gameplay, but just know that there's some confusing things, and obviously the game is still being worked on, so also expect things to change. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to check out Vault of the Void, if there's a deck builder that you prefer. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. Thank you, guys, and I'll talk to you later.